Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the East Meets West Hunt podcast presented by Spartan Forge. On today's episode, I have a little bit of a different kind of story to tell here, and I'm really excited to go through this one. But really, it's I'm just going to go through kind of my entire journey of starting East Meets West and what it's came to be, because ultimately, just recently here, I quit my full-time job and will be doing this full-time. And it's really crazy for me to be able to say that. And I've actually even debated on, making this video and podcast. I wasn't sure, I don't know. I didn't feel confident enough that, I had the ability to be able to say this or to be able to talk about it, and without, I don't want to sound, arrogant by any means or anything along those lines, I guess. But I think one of the things I get asked a lot is just about, how I got started, how this went. And now with being able to do this full time, it's kind of a crazy journey. And if from the outside looking in, it may look like, you started the podcast a few years ago and all of a sudden you went full time. Through this process of deciding that, maybe this is something that I can do full time, and me wanting to go on these, extravagant hunts to Alaska and out west every year, I realized that, I worked a regular job. I wasn't making a ridiculous amount of money or anything. So I had to figure out how to, budget for it and figure all of that out. And for me, it was like, okay, I need to get rid of as many expenses as I possibly can. So I went and looked at everything, and I was like, okay, where are my, at the beginning I had a Razor side by side. I had a newer truck. I had all these different things that were costing me money, and I had high rent. So, that was part of my decision for moving back home, was the lower cost of living. I could, buy a house that didn't cost as much, and I, sold my side by side, used that money to pay off my truck, and then all I had was, a house payment essentially, and well, I guess I paid off my student loans in that process too, but I lived, pretty frugally and didn't spend unnecessary money on things that I didn't need to, but I valued experiences over, material items. And I just had that in my mind with this goal. That's why, it takes a while to be able to do that. So for me to make a jump and to go do this full time with, if I had, a $700 a month truck payment, and, I had a mortgage that was $2,000 a month or whatever, and all these other things, and student loans debt through the roof, that'd be a lot harder to be able to do than being able to clear those things out ahead of time. So my risk level was much lower. And that's kind of something that I think is really important, and I wanted to make sure that I hit on here, is there's a lot of things that you have to plan for to be able to get to this point and be able to give this a shot. It was a lot longer of a story than that. It really started back in 2015, I believe, so 7 years ago. I had started reading books from entrepreneurs and just started learning about other opportunities. I had graduated college in December of 2013 and started working full time, and I just thought, that's just what you're supposed to do. You just go out, you get a job, you get a degree, you get a job, and you work, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just felt like this wasn't for me, and I just wasn't fully embraced in that entire work life. I wasn't into it. And, and it may sound lazy, but I knew that I wasn't lazy, and I just wanted to put my effort into something that was more than that. And so what I did was, I started reading these books and learning about, trying to be the best person that you can and being able to optimize yourself and always educating and learning. And I've really loved learning for a long time. Especially about things I like and that I want. So I've been, trying to learn from these books and these videos and I took I believe it was some sort of a master class and an online course, and just trying to learn about these types of things. And my original goal was I wanted to own an archery shop, and that was what I wanted to do. And so in 2016, I had lost my job. The manufacturing facility I worked at had shut down, and I lost my job, and I moved to just north of Pittsburgh and had to go down there, and it was like a whole different world to me. I felt like I was, kind of just completely out there on my own and a new place. And through my last job, I had met someone, a good friend of mine by the name of Chuck, and he had helped with, he had owned a bow shop, and he's like, would you want to help out and, just work a couple days a week down there after your regular day job? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to learn the ins and outs of an archery shop, because that's ultimately what I wanted to do. And so I went down to Bucks and Bows Archery, and I worked there for, I guess it was 2.5 years before I left and moved back to my hometown. But when I left my hometown and went there, it was the best thing that could have possibly happened to me. Me losing my job was by far the best thing that could have happened to me. So when I went down to the bow shop, I didn't really know anything about working on bows or equipment, and Rick, who's a store manager down there, and he helped me a lot, but he started me, I was sweeping floors and cutting arrows and doing some of the very minor tasks, I guess, because they couldn't trust me working on a bow. I don't know if they really ever got to that point where they did, but I started there and just wanted to learn, and anything that I got, I don't think I ever took $1 out of that shop. I just used it to buy new bows or gear or anything else. I just loved doing it. It was just kind of like a bonus for me to be able to do that. And I realized I love talking to people and learning, and just by that experience, I started getting really into system building with clothing and Sika gear. We were a dealer, and I quickly became the go-to guy at the shop for building people out with systems and educating them on why performance clothing can help you, and explaining that whole process. And I just continually started, just working my way up through there, and then got to go to the ATA show, got to meet a bunch of people, and just it was a really good networking tool, but also just something that when you think about like trying to get in the hunting industry, it's everybody wants to go right to the top and do that, and that's not the way that it really works most of the time. I'm sure some people do, but for me, it took a while, and it took some working through it. And again, I didn't really even know at that point that I wanted to work in the hunting industry, other than I wanted to own an archery shop. But what I learned there was the archery shops are the busiest during the times leading up to hunting season and during hunting season. And I just decided I didn't want to do that, because that's where I wanted to be, in the woods. So that was good that I got to have that experience and do it, but it just wasn't 100% for me. But I knew I loved talking about hunting with customers, and I loved that whole part of it. So I like I said, I was going to be leaving there, and while I was there, I started going out west and started hunting. I read Cameron Haynes' book, Backcountry Bow Hunting. It really got me into wanting to go out west, and then I discovered Donnie Vincent and watching some of his films, and I loved that whole aspect of it. I used to film a lot of stuff when I was into BMX back in middle school and going into high school, and I always liked camera type stuff and doing that. So I started like going kind of a different direction, and I was doing these hunts out west. And after my first one, I just wrote a story for myself, and my brother and I filmed it. But I wrote a story, and I submitted it to the Journal of Mountain Hunting, which still is an online journal, and they had a subscriber story. They picked one subscriber story every month, and they would release it on there. And I titled it East Meets West, which was the name my brother, I have to give him credit, Kurt, he came up with that. And they were like, we love this story, you know, telling about that experience and going to the backcountry for the first time. And, you know, I just kind of laid it all out there. And that was the first time I really did any writing other than in school. Like I never really had a thing for writing, but Adam Yonke from the Journal of Mountain Hunting, he's like, man, I'd love to get some more writing from you from that Eastern perspective. So I started writing more and I was sharing it on social media and some people that were following me and stuff there. I'd always been posting photos and stuff. So I was gaining a little bit of traction from a following standpoint. And everybody, you know, was like, oh, I wish I could do that hunt. I wish I could go out west, but I don't have that money. I don't have the time. And I was like, well, actually it's not, you know, if you budget it right and you do it DIY or you do this, like you can make that happen. And if you plan for these things, you can do more. And that's where like this thing started clicking. At that point, there was podcasts that started popping up. You know, you had Cody Rich and Brian Call and some other Western hunting podcasts that I really got into. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to do it because I want to talk to people that were way more successful than myself and learn from them to be able to become a better Western hunter, you know, personally. And I was like, well, if I throw a mic on, then I can help others the way that these people have all helped me to be able to realize that these opportunities are available. So as I had this idea in my head, it took me, I don't know, a year or two before I really kind of it came to fruition. And so in January of 2018, I was at the ATA show with Bucks and Bows, and I told Rick at the bar, I remember sitting next to him and telling him, like, I have this idea. I want to do a podcast. And he's like, what? You know, like, you know, he was supportive of it, but he wasn't really sure what I was talking about and what I was going to do with it. So it was, you know, this, okay, yeah, go for it, you know, but, it took me a little while, and I was like learning about business and how to start it up. In April 2018, I registered the business with the state of Pennsylvania and started getting hat and shirt designs made up because I loved apparel. So I wanted to like design my own hats, and I have a million hats at home. So I was like, I wanted to design some of that stuff. I learned how to use Adobe Illustrator and drew up my own logo, which took me way too long. I should have just hired that out. But I just kept trying to learn more and more and see what was possible and what I could do with that. So, and I was dragging my feet a lot, and because the year previous, I'm just stepping back just for a second here. I talked to Brian Call at the Total Archery Challenge from the Gritty podcast, and Brian, I was like, hey, I want to start a podcast, you know, like you, what do I need? And he was generous enough to give me that information as now I've come to learn after having a podcast. You know, it seems like hundreds of people every year asking, oh, I want to start a podcast. What do I need? What do I need to do? So the fact that he took the time to explain that to me, I really appreciated. But it took me still a while to do it. And that's where Rob Chalinsky from the Total Archery Challenge came into play. And I got to know him from the archery shop and going to shoot Total Archery Challenges. I told him about this idea, and he's like, let me talk to Sean, who owns TAC, and let's see if we can work something out to be able to help you and get a booth and get things rolling. He's like, can you get all the equipment to start doing your podcast, you know, in the next 3 weeks? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I ordered everything on Amazon right then and there, and literally showed up the Total Archery Challenge with no idea how to even use the equipment. Brian Call and then Jordan Harberson from Mountain Ops showed me kind of how to use it. They were my first episode that I went and recorded. So it was, and I ended up recording like 13 episodes over that weekend. And, you know, I did them with him. I did them with Matt Comment, who's become a really great friend of mine and a mentor. And I did one with Greg Litzinger, who's just here at the Mountain Buck Scouting Camp and has become a really good friend of mine. And Sloan Brown, when he just started his job at Yeti at that point. Like I got all these connections from doing this and just realized how much I loved talking to people and learning from people, and they all had their own sort of aspect with it. And it made me think about life differently and what was possible. And I really owe a lot of it to just the Western hunting side of things, and how it took a lot of discipline and consistency at working at it, from working out to shooting my bow and all these things to try to become successful at it. And it just kind of created a different version of myself that I definitely changed as a person over those years. And when I was decided to move back home and take another job, that it sucked leaving the bow shop. I loved working there. I loved those guys and everything, but I was like, I want to continue to do this thing on the side, but I wanted to be closer to home, where I had the ability to hunt more. With living, in the suburbs, I had to drive a lot more and stuff. So I put myself in a location that would allow me to be able to do more of that. And hunting big woods, mountain bucks is like what I've grown up doing my whole life. But I didn't talk about that as much beginning of the podcast, as it was focused more around the Western hunting. And I just decided to talk about it. I was like, no one wants to hear about me talk about how these low deer density areas and these relatively small deer compared to some of the Midwestern places. But I was pleasantly surprised that people did. And that was kind of like, with the Western hunting thing, I was very just brand new to it and didn't know a whole lot. But the whitetail side of things, I didn't consider myself an expert or anything, but I definitely had experience to be able to back that up, and in a family that's just been doing it forever and has taught me so much. So that's where kind of like the big woods whitetail thing came into it. And that started to evolve. And I wanted to keep learning more. And this is an important part of this whole thing, is like the willing to learn and the willing to spend money on willing to learn, and furthering, your education, not from the standpoint of college, but from the standpoint of online courses, and by going to workshops and classes, and all those things helped me so much. And like one of the ones was the hunting photographer course that Stephen Drake and Zach Boughton put on. And I signed up for that, and that was expensive. I was like, man, I don't know, it was like $1,000 or $1,200. And I'm like, that's a lot for this. But they were teaching the business side of this. And I'm like, is there an opportunity to be able to make money doing this thing that I love? And I learned a lot from that course. And also I wanted to become a better photographer to add more value to my customers, being the magazines, being the online blogs that I was doing for the writing side of it. And that's where I met Justin Mueller, him and I were in the same class together. And when Justin reached out to me and was like, hey, you doing any hunts out west this year? I'd love to come film you. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know this guy. I've never had a hunt really filmed before. So it was I felt kind of risky of like spending 14 days with somebody I'd never met before, but he's pretty persistent. And Justin's actually the one filming this right now, but he's persistent on it, and we came to an agreement to go give it a shot. And he's like, I want to make a film out of it, and let's enter it in the Badlands Film Festival. So went out, and that's when I ended up, after 4 years of hunting elk, killed my first elk on the first day of the hunt. And Justin had some epic footage of it, put together just a sweet film that we released on my YouTube channel. And that kind of opened up my eyes to the whole filming side of things and being able to do that. But at that point, the podcast was starting to grow, and I was starting to do some different things. And I just kept going to shows. I kept going to things and meeting people and talking to people, not from the aspect of like asking for anything. Just, I like meeting people. But what that did do is, once my podcast grew to a point where I was getting quite a few people listening every episode, that allowed me to, when I, approach some of these companies, or some of the companies that approached me to work with me on a level of like a partnership side of things, it was, okay, yeah, this makes sense. And then I started generating some income off of that, and generating income from writing and learning how to add value for somebody else. And then, then they were able to give value back to me. And as I started doing this and it started growing, I was like, man, there's a real opportunity here for me to be able to, potentially do this full time. And as I said, a couple times here already, like I love learning and I love educating, and I like being able to see how much that people have helped me. And there's endless amount of people that have been out there. I've named just a few, but so many that have helped me through this journey, and definitely not me alone. And I'm like, okay, so if I can help somebody else by putting out this information, then, maybe I can change their lives and be able to help with it while doing, selfishly what I love to do. And that's where it really kind of clicked for me that this is possible, and shifted my gears to doing more research and learning on the business side, the entrepreneurship side. Heather Kelly from Heather's Choice has been a giant mentor to me, and Cody Rich from the Rich Outdoors being a part of, just recently part of his Ideas Lab and the Rich Life Academy, like all those things. Todd Bumgardner from Human Predator Pack Mule, he's been a really big help and mentor towards me. Like there's been so many different people, and like the support system, my parents and my girlfriend and all these other people that have been really supportive of me to like, okay, this is something that you can make happen full time. And it just kept growing to a point where, I'm sitting in a place where I realized, I told myself at the beginning, like, or not right at the beginning, but when I started doing this and realizing there's potential here, I'm just going to work my ass off until it got to a point where I couldn't do both anymore. And I would not recommend that strategy as it just about hit me to the breaking point where I was working so much, on my regular job where I was spending 50 hours a week as an environmental health and safety manager, and then going to do everything with East Meets West, the podcast, the video, the writing, all that stuff on the side, and every weekend driving someplace to a show or an event and doing that. I was struggling to do the thing that I loved, which is hunting and scouting and being able to do that stuff. So it came to a point where I needed to make a decision. And about 6 months ago, I was talking to Mark Kenyon from Wire to Hunt, and I asked him his opinion. I was like, when do you know to jump? And he's like, just set a date and stick to it. Figure it out in the meantime. But you need to have a date set. So that's what I did. And I set that date here for the spring and just worked towards it. And it was the weirdest feeling to go into work and give my boss my 1 month's notice that I was going to be leaving and take off. It's still doesn't feel real to me, is like how I could make a living doing that. But like, honestly, it comes down to all the people that are listening or watching this right now. Without those people and the support, like it sounds so cliche or whatever, but it's true. Like without that support, there's absolutely no way that I'd be able to do this without, using my affiliate links that I have in the podcast notes or on my website. It saves you a little bit of money on a product, but also I get a small commission off of it, and supporting these companies that are supporting me, and I'm buying some of my apparel off my website, and the ones that just came to the Mountain Buck Scouting Camp, and I'm going to be releasing an online course and all these other things. And if you notice, like what I'm going to be going forward is putting out more content around things, but I want to do the educational side more than anything, because that's what has helped me, is what I'm kind of trying to flip and be able to help other people with. And online courses have been a huge help to me. In-person events have been a huge help to me. So that's what I'm trying to do, to be able to help others, kind of be able to experience some of the same things. And I don't mean it from the standpoint of someone, for someone's goal to work in the hunting industry, but I want to be able to help people be able to, become a better hunter or have a better experience is I guess a better word for it. Like not even just a better hunter, but have a better experience, which typically comes down to being a better hunter, from that and from the guests that I have on and the people that I've been able to surround myself with has been absolutely incredible. And I feel like I've definitely missed a bunch of parts of the stories. I'm just talking off the cuff and trying to, relive it. But it's been a long road, a long road of working towards it, and it's just really getting started from the standpoint. And now, like, this is what is making me be able to pay my house bill, and this is able to pay for food and groceries, where in the past I didn't need to worry about that. Like, this was just a side gig. And now, so that's, that gets serious, but I've had to make some decisions here recently that became difficult as I've seen that, once you start doing something like this, you do rely on money, but I also have some really high values from the standpoint of being honest and, not using products I don't want to use, or not doing anything that, just doesn't feel right to me. And I've had to make some really hard decisions to not do things that, financially and maybe even career wise would have been probably the best for me, and business wise would have been the best for me. But I want to stay true to everything that I hold valuable, and just be honest and do everything from that perspective. So that's been the route that I've chosen to take here and work towards it. So I just, again, want to thank everybody that's been there helping me through this entire process, and just been support systems, and everybody that's been behind the scenes, and all my friends and some of the people that work for these companies that have just treated me so great. I look forward to the future and what's to come. But again, thank you so much. Your ratings and reviews on the podcast, subscribing to the podcast, the YouTube channel, all that stuff helps. So if you have any feedback for me, or things I should do differently, or I always am open to that. I don't get offended. I want to do the best that I possibly can, and just keep growing as a person and now as a company, and to be able to, provide some information that can help you have a better experience. So if you have any questions or anything, feel free to reach out. Love to hear from you. But thank you so much once again, and we'll get back to talking about hunting related stuff next week.